Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. Bit of a follow-up on an interesting story that's kind of emerged over the last couple days. And it is on a program that we've talked about a lot this spring, the Arkansas Razorbacks, and obviously the roster building that they are in the midst of putting together under new head coach John Calipari. By the way, as you can see on the screen, we have our Torres-specific Twitter page, Torres on the Hogs, for any Arkansas fan that wants to kind of follow and be in touch with everything that's going on with the Razorbacks. Anyway, we talked a lot about the Razorbacks, but the bottom line is it's kind of wild. We are now here in the back half of May. And Arkansas still only has 7 scholarship players. Now, some of it is by design. John Calipari has kind of publicly said, like, look, I had way too many guys this past year at Kentucky. We might not, forget 13. We might not even get to 10. We might get to 8 or 9 and kind of cut it off from there and kind of take our chances at that point, bring on a couple grad transfers, whatever. I bring it up because when we last talked Arkansas, we did talk about a potential transfer in DJ Wagner. Visited last weekend as of 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 Central here on Friday when I'm recording here. As best we can tell, DJ Wagner has not yet committed to Arkansas. Now, I've said it quite a bit over the course of the week. I don't think it's a big deal. I don't think it's some sign that Arkansas has fallen off. DJ's just not the type of kid. He's not a, Joe Tipton, top 12, then top 7, then top 3, then I'm going to make mine. Even when he was an elite 5-star high school recruit, it was kind of quiet. It wasn't a big deal, whatever. So I bring it up because I still expect DJ Wagner at some point to be an Arkansas Razorback, maybe by the time that you watch this video. But again, even if he commits to Arkansas, you're only talking about 8 scholarship players, 7 without him. And so clearly, at some point, Calipari is going to have to bring in another player or 2 at minimum, just so you can have a tiny bit of depth in case of injuries. And of course, you need some good players so you can play 5-on-5 at practice, okay? Why I bring it up is because over the course of about the last 48 hours, I've been a little slow to report on this, but I think it's an interesting development, is that it appears as though John Calipari is making a push in a very unlikely place as he is in hot pursuit of 2, how about this, not portal kids, not high school All-Americans, but how about, again, European high-level players. When I talk about high-level players, I'm not talking about good, okay, whatever. I'm talking about potential lottery picks down the road. Arkansas reportedly has been in touch with Trilly Donovan, who runs that Discord. He kind of runs a private message board. He was the first one to report it. And I've kind of independently confirmed with some people around Arkansas that, yeah, there's been at least some phone calls being made. So I want to talk about both these players because this is a fascinating development, very interesting, and it just shows in this new world of roster building, you can't leave any stone unturned. But also, when John Calipari is your best head coach, when he is your head coach, he is going to go after the best players, regardless of whether they're from the States, whether they're in high school, whether they're transfers, whether they're European, whether they're whatever. He is full speed ahead. So let's talk about it. The first player that Arkansas appears to be in hot pursuit of is Nolan Traore. And I'll be honest, I didn't know a ton about either of these guys prior than a few days ago, but Nolan Traore is a 6'3" guard from the country of France. And again, he's a guy that if you follow international basketball, if you follow really just how players come up through the system, and certainly if you're a big NBA draftnik, this is a name that you are probably familiar with. 6'3" guard. He's 17 years old, so he's not yet draft eligible. But some believe that he is one of the best guards available in the 2025 draft class. So interesting story. He's not a super hyper athletic kid, but he's kind of got that savviness to him. Not super athletic, but he kind of gets to his spots on the floor. He's good in the pick and roll. He's kind of an up and down shooter, but great passer, great distributor, great scorer at the rim. He really actually had a breakout game at the Nike Hoop Summit this past spring. For people who are not familiar, it's basically an international game where Nike brings in the best high school players in America. Team USA brings in the best players in America. and they compete against the best players high school aged in the world. So this is a game I've actually attended it a few times. I haven't in a few years, but the game was about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I will say I actually did watch a little bit of it. It was like an 11 Eastern, 8 Pacific tip-off. I was in the Fox Sports Radio studios. It was like the only live sporting event on at that time. But Nolan Traore played really well in that game, 14 points, 4 assists. People were raving about him all week long at that game. So it appears as though Arkansas has shown some interest. And then the other player who I think is equally as interesting is Egor Demir, a player that I definitely was not familiar with over the last couple days, until the last couple days, I should say. But again, you start to make some phone calls. You talk to some people in the draft world. I talked to some coaches that may or may not be recruiting him, or at least have kicked the tires on him. This kid is one of the elite 2025 guys anywhere in the world. Okay, 2025 is the year of Cooper Flagg. It's the year of Ace Bailey, who's going to Rutgers. This kid ain't far behind. 6'8". He's from Russia. And he's kind of that new age dude that's 6'8", but he can handle the ball, but he can pass the ball, but he can distribute, but he can hit threes, but he can finish at the rim, but he can break a press by himself. Like he is very much what basketball has become. Not only international, but a guy that even at a 6'8", 6'9", is not a go to the low post and catch a ball and try to dunk it. He's taking people off the dribble. He's grabbing a rebound and going. And he is, again, maybe even a higher level prospect than Nolan Traore. Egor Demir, I have seen as like a potential top 5 to top 10 pick in the 2025 NBA draft. So I bring it up because these are two guys that Arkansas is at least appears to be poking around in. And I find it fascinating. I'm excited to watch these recruitments. But what I will say, and I will warn Arkansas fans, just be wary. This is not like recruiting an American kid. It is much more complicated. That's not a knock. That's not an insult. That's not me being an ugly American. It's just the truth. And I was really thinking about it is, as exciting as seeing something like this is, I still think there's a lot of steps. I think there's probably about 3 reasons why, just be excited, do your homework, but don't get overexcited either. The first one is, listen, and again, this is going to sound like I'm making a knock or whatever, but there is an academic component to all this, okay? And I'm far from an expert on European transcripts and how they, how it works with admissions offices at every different school in the country. But these guys have been professionals. And while they certainly have an educational background, that's not what I'm not saying, but there are complications when they come to the United States and they try to get eligible. Just look at Big Z last year, who came from Croatia back in August of 2023. He commits, and every, Kentucky fans, that's not a knock. It's just a reality. Kentucky fans just think, okay, great. See you day 1 of classes. We're excited to have you. And then you find out that there's issues with the NCAA. First, there's issues with Kentucky's own admissions. Then there's issues with the NCAA after. And I said it with Big Z, and I'll say it for anybody, is, listen, it's tough because certainly college is about providing an education. But I do think the schools and even the NCAA, and I know it's easy to criticize the NCAA and everything they do is wrong and they're the worst ever and blah, blah, blah. There is an educational component to this. And I think whether it's the school or the NCAA, they do have to make sure these players are capable of doing the work. Not a knock, but again, English probably isn't their first language. Again, the educational system is just different there as they're playing as professionals. And so there's always going to be a lot to wade through when it comes to transcripts and getting kids even into school. And then once they're in school, cleared by the NCAA. Again, that's not my opinion. Just use Big Z as an example from last year. It took forever for Kentucky to even admit him. Then Kentucky admits him, and it takes a while for him to be cleared by the NCAA. Beyond that, it's also worth noting, these guys are professional basketball players, okay? And obviously that line of professional has been kind of blurred in this NIL era. I mean, you go back 10 years. I mean, if you even suited up for a professional team, you could not play in the States, right? Enes Kanter famously gets to the U.S. They find out that he played pro basketball at 15, 16, and he's ruled permanently ineligible by the NCAA. It's different now, but where the complication comes in is these guys are under professional contracts. And so it's not always easy to necessarily get them out of said professional contracts. Now, it's not always impossible, but sometimes it takes time. And listen, if you're a European club and you have a high-level asset that whether it's the NBA or an American college wants, of course you're going to, whatever the buyout is, make sure that you get every last dollar of that. And so again, not going to sit here, not going to lie, not going to say that I've seen Egor Demin's professional contract and what the buyout looks like and what does it mean and this and that. But I think we can all agree it's a unique situation and sometimes it takes time. Listen, I mean, you even go back to last summer. Forget Big Z. Adai Mara, if you're not familiar with the name, was a lottery level talent. UCLA was recruiting him. It took them months to get his contract figured out. There was other issues too, but part of it was the contract and getting him out of the contract and getting him to the States. And so, do I know every single thing that? No, but it took time. And it's not just something that happens like this. Again, it's not like it is in the States. It's not, hey, call Joe Tipton, have him make a graphic and you're coming to campus a week later, right? It's not that simple. So you have those elements of it. And then finally, I think the other important part to note is both these guys have been recruited previously. And so the fact that they haven't committed other places, I think it's different for both. Now with Traore, found it interesting. He did a kind of a tour of the States a few months back, visited Bama, visited Gonzaga, visited Xavier, did not commit. And so I'm going to do some homework this weekend to try to figure out why. Was it a contract dispute? Does he just not want to play here in the States? Or is there something else? I mean, maybe there's an academic component to it. Maybe there's a contract component to it. Maybe there's whatever. I think the other thing that's interesting, by the way, Traore apparently is in the playoffs in his league right now. So that might be another nuance to it. He might not even be able to have his season done for another week or two. So how does that slow down the process? So there's a lot going on. As far as Egor Demir is concerned, listen, I'll tell you, he seems to have a more concrete recruitment, I guess is the best way to put it. Seems like it's Illinois and BYU. Illinois has kind of dropped out. I've heard BYU feels like they're in pretty good shape with him already. So they're not kicking the tires. They're a little bit further down the road. And I know what some people would say, oh, why BYU? Mark Pope just left. Well, remember, their new head coach, Kevin Young, came from the NBA. He was a longtime assistant with the Phoenix Suns, worked in the G League, has ties all over the world. But as importantly, and we won't know it until we see the actual product on the floor, but I bring it up because he is going to run an NBA-style system. And so I think that's what the pitch is going to be to that kid. Now, again, hasn't committed, which is a good sign if you're Arkansas and you want him, but also it just kind of speaks to the fact that, listen, there's complications. There's transcript stuff. There's contract stuff. There's a lot that goes into all of this. So we'll see what happens. But again, you just talk about a fascinating little update. We're looking at the portal. We're trying to figure this out. We're trying to figure that out. What does this mean? What does that mean? Whatever. Well, as it turns out, maybe we're looking under the wrong rock because John Calipari is talking to some overseas players. Now, he's obviously here in the States. It's a live weekend. In other words, coaches can be in the gym evaluating high school guys. And so I just bring it up because you talk about a fascinating turn of events. John Calipari, he's the old Austin Powers, international man of mystery. And I'm fascinated to see how this all plays out. If you enjoyed this video, do me a quick favor. Make sure to subscribe to the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. You see that little subscribe button down below. New videos going up basically every day. College basketball, college football, certainly as we get deeper into the summer, into the fall. Make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications. Arkansas fans, make sure to follow Torres on the Hogs on Twitter.